Tonight, we're going to explore how ancient humans slept at night, long before bedrooms, mattresses, alarm clocks, or even the reassuring click of a door locking behind you. Picture yourself standing beneath a sky with no electric glow anywhere on the horizon. There are no street lamps, no phone screens, no distant headlights. Darkness arrives with authority. The stars seem impossibly bright. The air cools quickly against your skin, and somewhere beyond the edge of the firelight, something moves through dry grass. You are tired, but sleep is not simply a matter of closing your eyes. For early humans, nighttime is a negotiation between exhaustion and survival. You need warmth, you need shelter, you need companions nearby, and ideally, you would prefer not to wake up because a large animal has developed an interest in your sleeping arrangements. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, you can also share where in the world you are listening from and what your local time is. There is something strangely fitting about people in different places, under different skies, all listening to a story about the ancient night. Now, dim the lights and allow the modern room around you to become a little less important. You find yourself in a much older landscape. The ground beneath your feet is uneven. Perhaps you're near a rocky overhang, or beside a stand of trees where branches break the wind. The scent of damp soil mixes with smoke from a small fire. The smoke stings slightly when the breeze turns, but nobody complains much. Smoke is irritating, certainly, yet darkness without fire can be considerably more irritating. Your sleeping place is not permanent. That is one of the first things to understand. For many ancient hunter-gatherer communities, movement is part of life. People follow animals, seasonal plants, water sources, and favourable weather. A sleeping place might serve for one night, several weeks, or longer, depending on circumstances. There is no universal ancient bedtime. You do not glance at a clock and decide that 10:30 seems sensible. Your body responds to light, temperature, hunger, activity, social life, danger, and season. As sunset approaches, activity gradually changes. The bright practical work of daylight becomes harder. Fine tool making, searching for berries, repairing hunting equipment, gathering firewood, preparing hides, and watching children all become more difficult as shadows deepen. But darkness does not instantly mean sleep. You sit near others. The fire cracks. Someone adjusts a piece of wood with a stick. A child shifts closer to an adult as the temperature falls. Conversation continues. Anthropologists studying communities living without electric lighting have found that people do not always fall asleep immediately after sunset. Human beings can remain awake for several hours, talking, eating, tending fires, telling stories, or simply resting. That observation gives you a useful clue. Ancient nights may have been dark, but they were not necessarily silent or inactive. You lower yourself toward the ground. There is no mattress waiting for you, but neither are you necessarily lying directly on cold stone like some heroic museum display of prehistoric misery. Records cannot describe these earliest sleeping arrangements because writing does not yet exist. But archaeology provides its own quiet evidence. At some ancient sites, researchers have found layers of grasses and plant material arranged deliberately on living surfaces. These appear to have formed bedding, creating insulation between human bodies and the ground. That matters more than it sounds. The earth can steal body heat surprisingly quickly. Even in regions where daytime temperatures are warm, nights can become uncomfortable. A layer of dry grass, leaves, reeds, or animal skin creates separation from damp soil and cold stone. Comfort is not merely luxury. Comfort can be survival. You stretch out on a bed of vegetation. It smells faintly sweet and dusty. The stems press unevenly against your shoulder. You shift. A twig seems to have declared a personal disagreement with your ribs. Prehistoric life contains many profound mysteries, but the universal human experience of finding the one uncomfortable object in your bed probably requires very little explanation. Oddly enough, some ancient plant bedding may have served another purpose. At certain archaeological sites, researchers have suggested that people selected plants with insect-repelling properties. Ash layers beneath bedding may also have discouraged crawling insects, so your sleeping mat may not simply be soft, it may be pest control. This becomes extremely understandable when you remember that ancient humans share their world with fleas, ticks, lice, mosquitoes, beetles, and many tiny creatures that regard sleeping mammals as an excellent opportunity. You scratch your ankle. Something may have bitten you, or perhaps, now that you're thinking about insects, everything suddenly feels suspicious. The firelight changes. Orange becomes red. Red becomes a low glow. Nearby, someone adds another branch. Fire has transformed human life in countless ways, and nighttime is one of the most important. A fire gives warmth, especially in cold environments. It provides light. It may help discourage certain predators. It allows cooking to continue into darkness. It creates a social center around which people can gather. Yet fire also demands attention. It consumes fuel. It produces smoke. Sparks can escape. If you rely on it through a cold night, someone may need to maintain it. This means sleep can be interrupted by practical responsibilities. You might wake because the flames are fading. You might hear someone moving. You might smell fresh smoke as fuel catches. You might open your eyes briefly, see familiar shapes around you, and drift back into sleep. Modern ideas about sleep often imagine a sealed private room, stable temperature, soft mattress, and uninterrupted darkness. Your ancient sleeping environment is almost the opposite. You hear breathing, coughing, the rustle of hides, the shifting of bodies, perhaps distant insects hum, perhaps an owl calls. Perhaps something larger makes a noise that causes several people to become suddenly very awake. Sleeping near others offers protection. A group has more ears than one person. If danger approaches, somebody may notice. This social dimension of sleep is ancient and deeply human. You are vulnerable while unconscious. Your muscles relax. Your awareness fades. Your reaction time disappears. To sleep safely, you need trust. You trust that the place is protected enough. You trust that companions are nearby. You trust that the fire will last. You trust, perhaps somewhat optimistically, that the night will pass without drama. Researchers sometimes describe sleep as one of evolution's puzzles because unconsciousness seems dangerous. An animal that spends hours unable to respond fully to threats appears to be taking a remarkable risk. And yet sleep is essential. Your body demands it. Your mind demands it. You cannot simply decide that predators are inconvenient and therefore stop sleeping. So ancient humans adapt. Shelter helps. Fire helps. Groups help. Choosing sleeping sites carefully helps. Your mind drifts toward the landscape itself. Where would you sleep? An exposed valley might offer visibility but little protection from wind. Dense vegetation may block the breeze, yet hide animals. A cave provides shelter from rain and cold. But caves can already have occupants, some of whom possess claws and a very poor understanding of tenancy agreements. Rock shelters can offer a useful compromise. They shield you from weather while allowing relatively easy access to the outside. Mainstream archaeological evidence confirms that ancient humans repeatedly used caves and rock shelters across many regions of the world. But it would be misleading to imagine everyone living permanently in caves. Many groups probably slept in open camps or temporary structures made from wood, brush, hides, or other available materials. Most of those structures disappear. Stone survives. Wood rots. Grass decays. Animal skins vanish. Archaeology therefore gives you a biased picture. The most durable places leave the clearest traces, while ordinary camps can fade almost completely into the soil. Historians still argue whether some famous prehistoric shelter sites represent regular homes, seasonal camps, temporary refuges, or places used only for particular activities. The debate matters because sleeping habits depend heavily on mobility. If you remain in one location for months, you might improve your sleeping space, you clear stones or you gather more bedding, you arrange hearths carefully, you create repeated sleeping areas. If you leave tomorrow morning, your standards may become slightly more flexible. A patch of dry ground suddenly looks luxurious. Season also changes everything. In warm weather, sleeping outdoors might be comfortable. You can spread out. Air moves across your skin. The stars remain visible above you. In colder months, bodies cluster closer. Shelters become more important. Animal hides provide warmth. The fire becomes central. Rain transforms a pleasant campsite into a miserable one. Wind finds every gap. Humidity settles into bedding. The practical challenge is always the same: keep enough body heat, remain dry enough, and rest safely enough to function tomorrow. Your ancient body understands darkness differently from your modern one. Without artificial lighting, sunset produces a dramatic change in the environment. The spectrum of available light shifts. Visual tasks become difficult. Melatonin production responds to darkness. The body begins preparing for rest, but human sleep is flexible. Moonlight may extend activity. A bright full moon changes what you can see. Cloud cover makes the same landscape darker. Weather alters sound. A windy night can conceal movement. A still night carries distant noises clearly. You lie quietly and listen. The ability to distinguish harmless sounds from dangerous ones is valuable. A branch falls. No reaction. A small animal scurries nearby. Perhaps someone turns their head. A larger sound comes from beyond the camp. Conversation stops. For a few moments, everyone listens. Then the tension fades. You settle again. Sleep comes gradually. Not everyone necessarily sleeps at exactly the same moment. Different ages have different rhythms. Children become tired at different times from adults. Older people may wake more often. Some people naturally stay alert later. Others wake earlier. This variation may accidentally create a form of nighttime coverage. Modern research on hunter-gatherer sleep has suggested that groups can experience very few moments when absolutely everyone is asleep simultaneously. That does not prove every prehistoric community behaved the same way, but it offers an intriguing possibility. Your group may protect itself partly through ordinary differences in human sleep patterns. No formal guard schedule is required. One person is awake because a baby is restless. Another wakes to tend the fire. Someone else simply cannot sleep. For once, insomnia may be socially useful. You begin to understand that prehistoric sleep is less about a perfect night's rest and more about adaptability. You sleep when conditions permit. You wake when something changes. You adjust your bedding. You move closer to warmth. You respond to children. You listen to animals. You notice weather. And through all of it, your body performs the same ancient transition. Your body still performs now. Thought becomes loose. Sounds blur. Muscles soften. The world withdraws. For a moment, it feels as though the fire is moving farther away, although it has not moved at all. The smoke becomes faint. Voices fade. The rough plants beneath you no longer seem quite so rough. Somewhere nearby, another person breathes steadily. Above the shelter, darkness stretches across a landscape with no glowing cities, no engines, no distant aircraft crossing the sky. There is only night, not romantic night, not peaceful night in the modern sense, a practical night, a cold night sometimes, a noisy night often, a night filled with tiny discomforts, shared warmth, familiar bodies, uncertain sounds, and the simple biological need to rest. Your eyes close. You are not alone. The fire still glows, the group remains close, and for several quiet hours, that is enough. The flames settle into a steady orange glow, and the darkness beyond them seems deeper because of it. You sit close enough to feel heat on your shins. The air behind you is cold, but the skin facing the fire is almost too warm. Every few moments, a branch collapses inward with a soft crack, sending sparks upward before they vanish into the black sky. Fire changes the night completely. Without it, darkness simply arrives and takes possession of the landscape. With it, a small circle of light appears, a temporary human island surrounded by everything you cannot see. You begin to understand why controlling fire becomes one of the most important developments in human history. It does far more than cook food. At night, it creates time. The sun may have disappeared, but activity does not have to end immediately. People can remain awake, hands can still work, faces remain visible, food can be prepared, children can be comforted, stories can continue long after daylight fades. The fire allows part of the day to stretch into darkness, and that extension may have reshaped human social life. You hear voices around you, someone speaks slowly, another person responds, a child laughs once, then grows quiet. The sound seems strangely intimate because there is nowhere else for attention to go. No glowing screen competes for your eyes. No distant machinery fills the air. Faces appear and disappear as flames move across them. Some researchers have suggested that evening firelight creates a special kind of social setting. During daylight, conversation often concerns practical matters. Where food was found, which path to follow, what needs repairing, who saw animals near the water. But nighttime conversation can become different. Stories stretch longer. People recall absent relatives. They speak about unusual animals, frightening encounters, dreams, ancestors, and events from distant seasons. Firelight may encourage imagination because the practical demands of the day have weakened. You're no longer searching for food. You're no longer moving across difficult ground. For a while, you simply sit. The human mind begins wandering. A mainstream historical fact is that controlled fire is extremely ancient. Archaeological sites associated with early humans contain burned material, heated stone, and hearth-like features dating far back into the human past. Exactly when humans first mastered fire remains difficult to determine. Natural wildfires also leave burned material. Lightning strikes, grasslands burn, trees fall and smoulder. So archaeologists must distinguish between fire created or maintained deliberately and fire that occurs naturally. Historians still argue whether the earliest evidence represents true habitual fire use or only occasional exploitation of naturally occurring flames. That distinction is important. There is a large difference between finding a burning branch and being able to keep a fire alive through the night. You imagine how valuable a surviving ember becomes. Starting a fire without modern tools takes skill. Friction can create heat. Certain stones can produce sparks. Dry tinder must catch. Fuel must be prepared. Wind can help or ruin the attempt. Rain is rarely cooperative. Once fire exists, keeping it alive may be easier than creating it again, so you tend it carefully. You push a half-burned branch toward the center. The wood hisses faintly. A glowing section brightens. For ancient travelers, carrying fire may sometimes be easier than repeatedly making it. Hot embers can be preserved in suitable materials and transported from one camp to another. A curious footnote appears in many traditional societies. People develop surprisingly clever ways to preserve smouldering material, wrapping embers in slow-burning substances so the heat survives for hours. The practice is practical rather than dramatic. Nobody marches heroically through the landscape holding a giant flaming torch. That would be inconvenient. Instead, the goal is controlled survival of heat. small, quiet, useful. At night, the fire also influences where you position yourself. Everyone wants warmth, but nobody wants smoke directly in the face. So bodies shift constantly. A change in wind direction can rearrange the entire group. One moment, you are comfortable. The next, smoke pours toward you. Your eyes water. You cough. You move. Someone else inherits the problem. Ancient firelight is calming in modern imagination, but real fire is rather demanding company. It crackles. It spits sparks. It creates smoke. It needs fuel. It can burn clothing, bedding, hair, and shelter materials if treated carelessly. Sleep too close and you may become overheated. Sleep too far away and you may become cold. Finding the correct distance is an ancient form of nighttime engineering. You feel heat across your face while the back of your body cools. Perhaps you turn over. Now the warm side becomes cold and the cold side begins warming. A human rotisserie, performed slowly and without dignity. Fire may also reduce some dangers. Many animals avoid approaching active flames. Light makes it easier to see movement near the camp. Smoke can discourage insects. Heat helps people survive colder climates. These advantages become especially significant as humans move into environments where nighttime temperatures fall sharply. The ability to remain warm without relying entirely on natural shelter expands where people can live. You hear something beyond the light, a rustle. Conversation stops briefly. Everyone looks outward. The fire illuminates nearby ground, but its brightness creates another problem. Your eyes adapt to the flames. The darkness beyond them becomes harder to see. This is one of the strange contradictions of fire. It makes the immediate area visible while making the distant night seem even blacker. You stare long enough and shapes begin appearing where nothing exists. A bush becomes an animal. A rock becomes a crouching figure. Two reflected points might be eyes, or perhaps merely droplets of water catching the light. The brain dislikes uncertainty. It fills gaps. Ancient people experience the same nervous imagination that modern people feel when a coat hanging in a dark room suddenly looks suspiciously human. The difference is that occasionally, in the ancient night, there really might be something out there. You listen more carefully. Nothing approaches. The conversation resumes. As the evening continues, the fire changes character. At first it is lively. Bright flames rise. Fresh wood pops. Later, the fire becomes quieter. Large flames disappear. Glowing embers remain. The heat becomes steady and low. This may be the best stage for sleeping. You do not need brilliant light. You need warmth. Someone may arrange heavier pieces of wood so they burn slowly. Different woods behave differently. Dense hardwood can produce long-lasting coals. Dry branches catch quickly but vanish quickly. Resinous wood may burn fiercely. Learning which fuel lasts through cold hours becomes useful knowledge passed from one generation to another. You begin noticing how much intelligence hides inside ordinary routines. Collecting wood is not simply collecting wood. You need the correct amount, the correct dryness, the correct size. You need to know where fuel can be found. You need to estimate weather. You need to judge how long the night might feel. A cold night with insufficient fuel can become dangerous. A mild night with an enormous fire simply wastes effort. Ancient people become skilled observers because the environment repeatedly demands attention. You notice wind direction, cloud cover, moisture, temperature, the behavior of animals, the smell of approaching rain. Fire sits in the middle of all these observations. It responds visibly to changing conditions. Strong wind bends flame. Wet fuel smokes. Dry weather makes sparks more dangerous. A sheltered hearth burns more predictably. Some archaeological sites show carefully constructed hearths rather than random patches of burning. Stones may be arranged around fire. Shallow pits may contain ash. Repeated burning can leave distinct layers in the ground. A council decree cannot tell you this, because councils do not yet exist in the forms familiar to later civilizations. But physical evidence does something equally useful. It shows repeated behavior. People return to fire. They organize space around it. They build daily life around heat and light. The placement of hearths can even help archaeologists infer how ancient groups use their shelters. Food preparation may occur in one area, tool-making in another. Sleeping spaces may cluster nearby without being directly beside the flames. Fire becomes a center point. You orient yourself around it almost unconsciously. If you wake in darkness, the faint red glow tells you where you are. It shows where others lie. It offers reassurance. Yet sleep near fire is rarely uninterrupted. Wood collapses. Someone adds fuel. Smoke shifts. A spark lands nearby. An ember fades and the temperature drops. Your body responds. You wake slightly, adjust, then drift again. This creates a form of sleep that may be lighter and more responsive to the environment than the sealed, temperature-controlled sleep common in modern homes. No agreement has been reached on whether ancient firelight consistently changed human sleep duration in the same way across different climates and communities. Some scholars emphasize the role of natural darkness and circadian rhythms. Others point out that social activity around fires could keep people awake well beyond sunset. The answer probably varies. A cold winter night is not the same as a warm tropical evening. A large group is not the same as a small travelling party. A secure shelter is not the same as an exposed camp. Ancient sleep refuses to fit neatly into one universal schedule. Fire adds another layer of flexibility. You can choose to stay awake longer. You can repair something after dark. You can eat later. You can talk. You can sing softly. You can watch children play at the edge of the light. Perhaps this extended evening creates opportunities for teaching. Older people demonstrate techniques. Young people listen to stories about places they have never visited. Knowledge moves through the group without being written. Firelight becomes a classroom without walls. It also becomes a place of memory. Imagine a story repeated many times beside many fires, a dangerous river crossing, a successful hunt, a storm, a death, a strange animal seen far from camp. Each repetition preserves information. Some stories may contain practical guidance hidden inside entertainment. Do not camp near that flooded valley. Avoid that plant. Water can be found beyond those hills. That animal behaves differently during a particular season. The night gives these stories time. Daylight is busy. Darkness makes room. One scandalous aside, at least from the point of view of strict efficiency, is that ancient people probably waste plenty of time around fires too. Not every conversation is sacred wisdom. People gossip, they joke, they exaggerate. Someone probably tells the ancient equivalent of a story everyone has heard far too many times. Another person may quietly wish they would stop. Humanity has been socially complicated for a very long time. The fire does not make everyone profound. It simply gives people somewhere to sit together. That social closeness matters at bedtime. You can see familiar expressions, you hear familiar voices. The presence of companions may reduce anxiety. Fear does not vanish, but it becomes shared. If something unusual happens, you are not facing it alone. The fire is part practical technology, part gathering place, part psychological comfort. Slowly, conversation decreases. Someone stretches. Someone lies down. A few voices remain low. The flames have nearly vanished now. The coals glow beneath a grey crust of ash. Occasionally, a red line brightens when air passes across it. You extend your hands toward the remaining warmth. The heat is softer now. Your eyes no longer sting from smoke. The darkness feels closer, but less threatening. The scent of burned wood settles into hair, skin, and clothing. You become used to it. Smoke is part of the night. You lie down at a careful distance from the hearth. The ground holds some warmth. A final branch cracks quietly. You listen as the group grows still. Somebody remains awake, perhaps intentionally, perhaps simply because sleep has not arrived yet. The embers pulse. Your eyelids become heavy. The circle of light shrinks. The world outside continues without you. Animals move. Wind passes through grass. Clouds cross the stars. And at the centre of a vast ancient darkness, a small human fire continues glowing, keeping cold. Fear? And complete blackness just far enough away for sleep to come. A rough wall rises beside you, cool beneath your fingertips. The shelter is shallow rather than grand. It does not resemble the enormous painted caverns that modern imagination loves to fill with flickering torches and mysterious silhouettes. This place is more practical. A rocky ledge keeps off some rain. The ground slopes gently enough for water to drain away. Wind reaches you, but not with full force. You begin to see that choosing where to sleep is an act of judgment. A good sleeping place needs more than a roof. You look first at the ground. Is it dry? Is it level? Are there loose stones beneath the surface? Does water collect here after rain? Are insects already occupying the area in enthusiastic numbers? Is there evidence that another animal uses the shelter? These questions are not written down. They are learned through experience, and experience can be an unforgiving teacher. You crouch and brush your hand over packed earth. The surface is firm. Someone has already cleared all where larger stones. That alone changes the feeling of the place. Small improvements matter when your entire body will spend hours against the ground. In a mobile community, you may not construct a permanent bedroom, but you can still shape a resting area. Branches can be moved, sharp stones can be kicked aside, dry vegetation can be spread, hides can be folded. A raised edge of earth can help define where one person sleeps and another sits. The arrangement may look simple, but simplicity does not mean carelessness. Records confirm that early humans repeatedly selected particular areas inside shelters for different activities. Archaeological patterns of ash, stone tools, butchered animal remains, pigments, and compacted surfaces often suggest that people organize living spaces rather than scattering everything randomly. That means the ancient shelter can contain something surprisingly familiar. Zones, not rooms with doors, certainly. Nothing like a hallway leading politely toward a guest bedroom, but people still create order. A hearth belongs in one place. Waste may accumulate somewhere else. Toolmaking may happen where light is best. Sleeping areas may be kept relatively clear. You step farther beneath the rock overhang. The temperature changes. Outside. The air moves freely. Inside. The stone holds a more stable coolness. During hot weather, that can be pleasant. In cold weather, however, stone can feel unforgiving. You touch the wall again. Cold travels immediately into your palm. This is why insulation matters. A sleeping surface can be built in layers. First come branches or thicker vegetation, then softer grasses, then perhaps hides. The goal is not softness alone. You want distance from damp earth. You want trapped air beneath the body. You want fewer sharp objects discovering important parts of your spine during the night. You lower yourself onto a carefully arranged surface. It gives slightly beneath your weight. Not much, but enough. The difference between bare ground and a prepared sleeping platform becomes obvious immediately. Your hips are no longer pressing against stone. Your shoulder finds a softer place. Your head, however, remains an engineering problem. Pillows in the modern sense are not guaranteed. You may fold a hide. You may use bundled grass. You may rest your head on an arm. You may discover that a rolled piece of clothing works reasonably well until it slowly unrolls and abandons you. Oddly enough, later ancient societies sometimes use headrests made from wood, stone, or other hard materials. To a modern sleeper, this sounds less like a pillow and more like a punishment devised by an unusually disciplined furniture maker. Yet a raised headrest can keep the head off damp ground. and may help protect elaborate hairstyles or keep insects away from the face. Comfort depends partly on what you're used to. A soft feather pillow is not a universal human requirement. Support is, dryness is, warmth is, safety is. The shelter itself may be temporary. You move into a different landscape in your mind. There is no convenient cave nearby. Trees grow across open country, and long grasses move in the wind. Now shelter must be made. Wooden poles can be leaned together. Branches can be woven between them. Grass, reeds, bark, hides, or leafy material can cover the frame. The result may be small. You do not necessarily stand upright inside. A low shelter has advantages. It requires less material. It can be easier to warm. Wind has less surface to strike. If all you need is a place to sleep and escape weather, enormous interior space is unnecessary. Your shoulders brush the frame as you crawl inside. The air smells of fresh leaves, dry fibre, and earth. The roof rustles. A breeze presses against one side, and the entire structure answers with a faint creak. You are suddenly very aware that your home is made of sticks. Still, the interior feels protected. That feeling matters. Humans do not sleep only with the body. The mind also evaluates danger. An exposed sleeper can see more of the surroundings, but also feels more visible. A shelter reduces the open space around you. It creates boundaries. Even a thin wall of brush can make the darkness outside feel farther away. For a moment, it feels as though the world has become smaller. That can be comforting. A carefully chosen shelter also helps with weather. Rain is one of the most relentless enemies of sleep. Cold can sometimes be managed with insulation and shared warmth. Wind can be blocked. But once bedding becomes soaked, the night changes quickly. Wet material loses much of its insulating value. Skin cools. Clothing becomes heavy. The ground turns muddy. Sleep becomes difficult, so you study the roof. Water must run away from the sleeping area rather than directly onto it. Leaves should overlap. Hides need correct angles. Gaps may require stuffing. The entrance should avoid facing the strongest wind. A small difference in construction can decide whether you remain dry or spend several miserable hours listening to water drip beside your ear. Scholars bicker over how sophisticated some of the earliest temporary dwellings really were. Post holes, stone rings, concentrations of artifacts, and patches of altered soil can suggest structures, but the walls themselves often disappear completely. One researcher may see the remains of a hut, another may see a windbreak, a third may wonder whether the stones accumulated naturally. Ancient architecture is difficult to reconstruct when the architecture has politely decomposed. Still, some evidence strongly suggests deliberate construction at various prehistoric sites. Arrangements of stones and post supports indicate that humans build shelters rather than relying only on natural caves. This makes sense. Caves are useful, but inconveniently fixed in place. Food moves, water availability changes, animals migrate, plants ripen seasonally. If humans need to follow resources, portable or quickly built shelter becomes extremely valuable. You examine the materials around you. Everything comes from the local landscape. In woodland, branches are obvious. Near wetlands, reeds become useful. In open grassland, long grasses can be bundled. In cold environments, animal hides offer protection. Where large bones are available, they can sometimes contribute to structures. The architecture changes because the environment changes. There is no single prehistoric house. There are solutions, many of them temporary, many ingenious, most now vanished. You move outside and notice another detail. The sleeping area is not necessarily isolated from work. During the day, the same shelter may contain tools, food, children, containers, hides, and unfinished tasks. At night, space is rearranged, objects are shifted, sleeping material is spread, a useful surface becomes a bed. Morning will reverse the process, in that sense. Ancient sleeping spaces may resemble small modern homes more than luxury bedrooms. One place performs several jobs. The household adapts rather than dedicating an entire room to 8 hours of inactivity. A curious footnote emerges from the archaeological evidence in some places where plant bedding appears to have been periodically burned. The reason may be simple housekeeping. Old vegetation collects insects, dirt, food fragments, and unpleasant smells. Burning or replacing it refreshes the sleeping area. You imagine the satisfaction. The old bedding smoulders, smoke rises, pests retreat, at least temporarily. Fresh plants arrive. For a brief glorious moment, prehistoric housekeeping achieves the ancient equivalent of clean sheets. Then someone walks through with muddy feet. Civilization continues. You settle into another shelter. This one is more enclosed. The air warms quickly from bodies inside. The entrance is narrow. The roof traps heat. That sounds ideal until you notice the other consequence. Air becomes stale. Smoke from a nearby fire drifts inward. Human bodies produce moisture. Wet clothing dries slowly. The shelter smells of hide, smoke, soil, sweat, and vegetation. Privacy is extremely limited. You hear every movement. Someone turns, someone coughs, someone mutters in sleep. A child kicks a sibling. An adult reaches across the darkness to move a bundle that is somehow taking up far more room than it did when everyone lay down. The ancient sleeping shelter is protective, but it is not spacious. Personal territory exists mostly by negotiation. Perhaps each person has a familiar place. An elder sleeps where entry is easiest. Children remain close to caregivers. People who need to rise early stay near the opening. Someone who snores magnificently may be placed according to whatever ancient social diplomacy can accomplish. Sleeping position also matters. You might curl on your side to conserve warmth. You might lie close to another person. You may keep clothing on rather than changing into anything resembling modern sleepwear. Removing useful layers in a cold shelter would be an odd way to demonstrate confidence. Footwear may stay nearby. Tools may remain within reach. The boundary between being asleep and being ready to move can remain thin. A storm changes everything. Rain begins tapping against the roof. At first the sound is gentle. Then heavier drops follow. The structure trembles slightly under wind. You listen for leaks. One appears near your feet. A hand reaches up. Material is adjusted. The dripping slows. Nobody gives a speech about this achievement. Repairing the roof at night is simply part of living under a roof that was assembled from the surrounding landscape. The rain grows steadier inside. The small shelter becomes a world of its own. You hear water outside but feel mostly dry. You feel the ground beneath layered vegetation. The roof sits only a short distance above your face. A woven wall brushes your elbow. The confinement that might feel strange during daylight becomes reassuring at night. Your mind maps the space without seeing it. Entrance there. Companions beside you. Tools near the wall. Dry bundle near your feet. Everything important is close. The shelter does not need elegance. It only needs to work. And in that modest requirement, you recognize something deeply human. A sleeping place becomes meaningful through repeated use. A particular hollow fits your shoulder. A folded hide belongs beneath your head. A certain corner stays warmer. The rough floor gradually smooths beneath feet and bodies. Even temporary places can acquire familiarity. You lie still. Rain continues beyond the walls. The scent of wet grass seeps through the entrance. One drop lands somewhere in the darkness. Then another. The roof holds. The wind passes around you rather than through you. Your body relaxes because the little structure has done its job. It has separated you. just enough from the weather outside, not perfectly, not permanently, but through one dark stretch of night, sticks, stone, grass, hide, and human judgment have created the simplest luxury imaginable. A place where you can close your eyes, you lie close enough to another person that you can feel warmth through layers of hide and woven fibre. The space is crowded. An elbow rests somewhere near your shoulder. A child has managed to occupy an astonishing amount of sleeping area despite being much smaller than everyone else. Someone shifts their knees. Another person sighs. From the far side of the shelter comes the low, irregular rhythm of somebody already deeply asleep. This is not a private night. For much of human history, sleep happens in company. You do not retreat behind a closed door. You do not enter a separate room and disappear until morning. Your resting place is part of a group, and that group may include children, parents, siblings, grandparents, companions, visitors, and people whose exact relationship to you matters less than the simple fact that they belong here. Sleeping together solves several practical problems at once. The first is warmth. Human bodies produce heat constantly, and when people lie close together, some of that heat remains within the group. In cold conditions, distance feels expensive. You curl toward another person, shoulder near shoulder, back near back. A child is tucked between adults. Someone pulls a covering higher across several bodies at once. Shared bedding becomes more efficient than separate bedding because warmth is trapped in a common space. You can feel the difference almost immediately. The air between bodies stays warmer. Cold drafts become less noticeable. The ground still steals heat, but slowly. It is an arrangement that requires very little technology, just proximity. The idea may sound almost too simple, but simplicity has kept humans alive through countless cold nights. Mainstream anthropological evidence confirms that communal sleeping remains common in many societies, especially where households share limited indoor space or where social life is organized around extended families. That does not allow you to reconstruct every prehistoric sleeping arrangement with certainty, but it does show that solitary sleep is not the only natural human pattern. In many places, sleeping alone is unusual. Sleeping together is ordinary. You become aware of how strange modern privacy might seem from this perspective. A room for one person, a bed for one person. Sometimes an entire room used only for sleeping. A prehistoric family might regard this as impressive, luxurious, and possibly a little lonely. You shift slightly. The person beside you responds without fully waking. Bodies negotiate space in darkness. You learn where others usually lie. You know which child moves constantly. You know which adult wakes easily. You know who steals coverings. Certain human traditions may be older than recorded history. At the center of the sleeping group, infants require particular attention. A baby does not understand schedules. A baby wakes hungry, cold, uncomfortable, frightened, or simply awake for reasons known only to babies, who have always maintained a mysterious relationship with nighttime. You hear a small restless sound. An adult responds almost immediately. There is no need to cross a hallway. The child is already close. Feeding can happen without the household fully waking. Touch provides reassurance, warmth is shared, the infant's breathing can be heard. This closeness may also allow adults to detect trouble quickly. The same is true for older children. Nighttime can be frightening. Darkness is nearly complete, and the landscape contains sounds that cannot always be identified. A child waking beside familiar bodies does not need to face that darkness alone. A hand reaches out. Someone murmurs. The child settles. You begin to realize that communal sleep is not only an arrangement of bodies, it is an arrangement of attention. People monitor one another even while resting. The sleeping group is never entirely disconnected. A cough wakes somebody. A child whimpers. An older person shifts awkwardly. A strange noise outside causes several heads to rise at once. Nobody has to announce that something has changed. The group responds. This becomes especially important in places where predators, hostile strangers, fire, weather, or other dangers remain possible. One sleeper is vulnerable. Several sleepers create a network. Your ears may be closed to the world for a while, but someone else's are not. Natural differences in sleep timing can help. Some people become sleepy early, others remain alert longer, some wake before dawn. Older adults may sleep more lightly, parents wake because of children. Illness interrupts rest, dreams disturb people, temperature changes wake others. All these individual differences mean that a group can pass through the night with scattered moments of wakefulness. Researchers studying present-day hunter-gatherer groups have observed that members of a camp often sleep at slightly different times, creating periods when somebody is awake even without formal guard duty. It is an intriguing pattern. You do not need a person standing dramatically at the entrance with a spear for 8 hours. Nighttime vigilance can emerge naturally from human variation. One person scratches an insect bite, another checks the fire, someone gets up to relieve themselves, an elder cannot find a comfortable position. At almost any moment, a pair of eyes may open. Historians still argue whether this kind of staggered group sleeping functioned as a deliberate survival adaptation in early humans, or simply produced a useful side effect. The difference is difficult to prove. A behavior can be helpful without being consciously designed. Your group does not need to discuss sleep strategy around a meeting circle. Different bodies simply behave differently, and the result may be safer nights. You hear a faint movement outside, not loud, just enough. One person wakes. They listen. You remain half asleep, aware mostly because they have become still. The silence spreads. Another person lifts their head. For a few seconds, the entire shelter seems to listen through several people at once. Then a familiar sound follows. Perhaps a small animal. Perhaps wind. Tension dissolves. Everyone settles again. This is collective vigilance in its simplest form. No bells. No clocks. No formal rotation. Just attention moving through the group. Shared sleep can also protect those who are less capable of responding quickly. Children. The injured. The sick. Older adults. A person weakened by illness may not hear danger early enough. A group compensates. Someone else can wake them. Someone can help them stand. Someone can carry a child. Someone can gather essential objects. Survival becomes less dependent on the strength of each individual and more dependent on cooperation. That principle extends far beyond sleep, but nighttime makes it especially visible. You cannot remain strong, alert, and independent while unconscious. Sleep forces trust upon you. Every night, you hand part of your safety to others. In return, they hand part of theirs to you. A curious footnote appears in the way human groups often arrange themselves. In some traditional communities, sleeping positions reflect age, kinship, gender, status, caregiving responsibilities, or practical needs. There may be no written rule. Everyone simply knows where they belong. An elder prefers a particular side. Children cluster with caregivers. A visitor is given space near one family. A person who expects to leave early sleeps where movement will disturb fewer people. Even without walls, space can become socially organized. You begin to recognize the shelter as a map of relationships. Who lies beside whom tells a story. Marriage, parenthood, friendship, authority, dependence, trust, conflict. Sometimes. Imagine having an argument with someone and then discovering that your sleeping position remains approximately 15 centimeters from theirs. Ancient conflict resolution may occasionally have been encouraged by architecture. There is simply nowhere else to go. Oddly enough, snoring probably becomes a communal matter too. Human snoring is ancient because human airways are ancient. Someone nearby produces deep rumble. It begins quietly, then grows, pauses, returns with renewed confidence. Another sleeper makes an irritated sound. The snorer continues, unaware of the social crisis they have created. You can almost feel thousands of years of exhausted relatives silently considering their options. Perhaps someone nudges them. The noise stops. Relief spreads. Then it begins again. Not every ancient danger has teeth. Shared sleeping also means shared smell. Smoke clings to hair. Hides hold sweat. Damp vegetation has its own scent. People return from daily work carrying dust, animal fat, plant oils, mud, and whatever else the landscape has generously attached to them. Modern bedrooms are often treated as controlled environments. Ancient sleeping spaces are full of life, human life, animal life, plant material, food smells, fire smells, earth. Nothing is chemically neutral. Nothing smells faintly of manufactured lavender unless someone happens to have gathered an aromatic plant. And that, in fact, may happen. Herbs and fragrant leaves can be scattered or placed in bedding. Some repel insects, some smell pleasant when crushed. Others may be associated with healing or custom. You rub a leaf between your fingers. A sharp green scent rises. For a moment, it cuts through smoke and sweat. Tiny comforts matter. Touch matters too. A rough hand rests near yours. A child presses warm feet against your leg. An older relative sleeps with one hand curled near their chest. You know these bodies by ordinary familiarity. Their movements are recognizable. That familiarity itself can become calming. Humans respond strongly to social safety. When trusted people are nearby, the nervous system may relax more easily. Of course, this only works when the group is actually trusted. Humans also experience rivalry, tension, jealousy, and conflict. Sleeping together does not magically turn everyone gentle. Privacy becomes limited. Noise travels. Arguments cannot always be escaped. A restless person disturbs others. A sick person coughs through the night. An infant wakes repeatedly. Someone returns late. Another person rises early. Communal sleeping trades solitude for security. Whether that feels comforting or exhausting probably depends greatly on the night. You turn onto your side. The shelter is warmer now. Too warm, perhaps. Shared body heat has solved one problem and created another. You push the covering away from your chest. Someone beside you pulls it back. A silent negotiation begins. Temperature preferences are not identical. One person curls tightly, another stretches out. One wants more covering, another feels trapped beneath it. There are no thermostats available to settle the disagreement. Bodies adjust. People move toward or away from one another. Entrances can be opened slightly. Layers can be removed. Sleep becomes dynamic rather than still. You wake many times without remembering all of them. A foot touches yours. You move. A child rolls sideways. You make room. Someone coughs. You open your eyes briefly. A body rises and passes carefully toward the entrance. You hear soft steps, then silence. Each interruption is small. Sleep bends around them. Humans are remarkably capable of becoming accustomed to familiar disturbance. A repetitive sound that would keep a stranger awake may barely register to someone who hears it nightly. The breathing of companions becomes background. The rustle of bedding becomes background. Even the occasional murmur may fade into the pattern of sleep. What matters is novelty. A sound that does not belong. A movement that feels wrong. Sudden silence where noise usually exists. Your brain continues sorting information while you rest. Not perfectly, not consciously, but enough to help. There is something quietly impressive in this. A sleeping group is inactive and active at the same time. Bodies recover, muscles loosen, children grow, memories settle. yet the group remains loosely connected to its surroundings. One person wakes, then another sleeps. Attention rises and falls. Care moves through the night almost invisibly. You feel the person beside you shift closer as the air cools. No one comments. Warmth is simply redistributed. An infant gives one soft sound and is soothed. An older sleeper turns carefully. Someone near the entrance opens their eyes, listens for a moment, and closes them again. The group breathes in overlapping rhythms. You're surrounded by vulnerability, and strangely, that vulnerability becomes strength because it is shared. Nobody is fully self-sufficient here. Nobody needs to be. The night is easier because other people exist within reach. Their warmth reduces the cold. Their hearing extends your own. Their presence makes darkness less empty. Their care protects those who cannot protect themselves. You let your muscles soften. Your breathing slows. The crowded space no longer feels crowded. It feels inhabited. The difference is small, but important. Outside, darkness remains wide and uncertain. Inside, every sleeping body becomes part of a quiet human shelter, built not from wood or stone, but from closeness, attention, and trust. You wake in darkness, and for once, nothing seems wrong. No animal moves nearby. No storm rattles the shelter. No child cries out. No cold draught has found its way beneath your covering. You're simply awake. For a few moments, you lie still and listen. The night is deep. The fire has settled low. Someone nearby breathes steadily. Another person turns over and becomes quiet again. You expect sleep to return immediately. It does not. Your mind becomes clearer. You are not fully alert in the way you would be under bright daylight, but neither are you drifting. You exist somewhere in between, calm and awake in the middle of the night. This strange interval raises one of the most fascinating questions about ancient sleep. Did people once sleep in two separate stretches? The idea sounds unusual if you're used to thinking of sleep as one continuous block. You go to bed, you sleep, you wake in the morning. Simple. Except human sleep has not always followed such a tidy pattern. Historical records from much later periods describe people referring casually to a first sleep and a second sleep. They do not explain the idea as though it were exotic. They mention it as something ordinary. A person sleeps for several hours, then wakes for a period during the night, then returns to sleep until morning. This pattern is often called segmented sleep or biphasic sleep. You remain awake and consider what that might feel like. There is no panic. You do not immediately decide that something is wrong with you. You do not glance at a clock and calculate how many hours remain before morning. There is no glowing display beside your bed, informing you that it is 2:17 and therefore everything has become a personal crisis. You're awake because wakefulness sometimes belongs to the night. Records confirm that in parts of pre-industrial Europe, references to first sleep and second sleep appear in diaries, literature, court records, medical writings, and household descriptions. People might wake between these two periods and spend some time in quiet activity. They pray, they talk, they tend children, they add fuel to a fire, they think, they sometimes visit neighbours or continue small household tasks. Eventually, though, they return to sleep. This sounds remarkably different from the modern expectation that 8 uninterrupted hours should unfold perfectly from beginning to end. But the historical evidence does not automatically prove that all ancient humans slept this way. That is where the question becomes more interesting. You are lying thousands of years earlier than those written records. No diary exists. No physician records the pattern. No one writes, rather helpfully, that everyone woke around midnight and remained awake for an hour. Archaeology can reveal sleeping places, hearths, shelters, and sometimes nighttime activity. It cannot easily tell you whether a person slept from sunset to midnight, woke for 90 minutes, then slept again. Sleep leaves almost no direct fossil, So scholars turn to several kinds of evidence, historical descriptions, modern sleep experiments, anthropological observations, human biology, and each offers clues rather than complete answers. Your mind drifts through one famous line of research. When modern participants live for extended periods with much longer natural darkness and without ordinary artificial lighting, some begin to develop a divided sleep pattern. They sleep for several hours, wake quietly during the night, then sleep again. This has led some researchers to suggest that segmented sleep may emerge naturally under certain conditions. The dark period itself matters. Imagine winter without electric lighting. Night can last a very long time. If darkness begins in late afternoon and daylight does not return until morning, sleeping continuously for the entire dark interval may be difficult. Your body may simply not require 12 or 14 hours of sleep. So perhaps sleep spreads across the darkness with a wakeful period in the middle. You open your eyes again. The darkness has not changed. There is no reason to rise, yet your body feels rested enough for thought. Perhaps this midnight wakefulness once feels entirely normal. You might talk softly with someone else who is awake. You might adjust bedding. You might check a child. You might step outside briefly and look at the sky. Moonlight becomes important here. The moon does not shine equally every night. Sometimes it is absent. Sometimes a thin crescent hangs low. Sometimes a bright full moon turns the landscape silver. Without artificial light pollution, moonlight can transform nighttime visibility. A bright night allows movement that would be difficult during complete darkness. You may be able to see paths, recognize faces, find water, check animals, move through a familiar camp. This means ancient nighttime activity may vary according to lunar cycles. A bright moon can extend useful hours. A dark moon can encourage stillness. No agreement has been reached on whether lunar phases significantly structured ordinary sleep schedules across ancient societies. But researchers continue examining how human activity responds to natural light. Some studies suggest that sleep timing and duration can shift around the full moon. Others find weaker effects. The human body is not a machine responding to a single switch. Weather, season, workload, social activity, hunger, temperature, and individual differences all matter. You begin to see why the question resists a simple answer. Ancient people do not share one universal sleep schedule. A fishing community near warm coastal waters may live differently from hunters in a cold inland region. A group sleeping near the equator experiences relatively stable day length. A community much farther north faces dramatic seasonal changes. Winter darkness can be long, summer nights can be brief. Sleep adapts. That word appears again and again. Adaptation. You do not necessarily sleep according to abstract rules. You sleep according to circumstances. In one season, darkness encourages long rest. In another, work begins before sunrise. During periods of abundant food, evenings may be social. During scarcity, people may conserve energy. During migration, fatigue may overwhelm normal patterns entirely. So segmented sleep may be one possibility among many rather than a universal ancient standard. You sit up slowly. Your eyes have adjusted enough to distinguish shapes. Someone else is awake. They notice you. No conversation begins at first. You simply share wakefulness. There is something oddly peaceful about this. Modern insomnia often arrives with frustration. You are awake when you believe you should not be. That belief adds tension. The clock becomes an enemy. Every passing minute feels stolen from tomorrow. But if waking during the night is expected, the experience changes. You're not failing at sleep. You're simply between sleeps. This difference in interpretation may matter almost as much as the pattern itself. A curious footnote appears in historical descriptions of midnight wakefulness. People sometimes treat the interval between first and second sleep as a useful time for reflection. The mind is quiet. The household is still. Dreams from the first sleep remain fresh. Some writers describe prayer or contemplation during this period. Others mention conversation between couples. The night is not empty. It contains a pause. You can imagine why this interval acquires a special character. Daytime attention is pulled outward. Nighttime wakefulness turns inward. There are fewer tasks, fewer distractions. Thought becomes slower. Perhaps this is when worries surface. Perhaps plans form. Perhaps stories are remembered more vividly. Perhaps someone stares into darkness for 20 minutes wondering why a neighbour said something irritating 3 days ago. The ancient mind is still a human mind. Not every midnight thought is profound. You lie back down. Sleep still does not return. The silence makes tiny sounds more noticeable. An insect moves somewhere near the wall. A piece of wood settles. A sleeper exhales sharply and then becomes quiet. You can hear your own heartbeat faintly when your ear presses against the bedding. How long does this wakeful interval last? Perhaps minutes, perhaps an hour, perhaps longer. Without a clock, time feels different. You do not measure it precisely. The night is divided by events rather than numbers. The fire burns low. The moon shifts. Someone wakes. Someone sleeps. The air cools. Birds eventually begin calling. These changes tell you where you are in the night. The absence of mechanical timekeeping may make nighttime wakefulness feel less urgent. There is no exact bedtime, no exact waking time, no scheduled alarm. Daily responsibilities still exist. Of course, hunting, gathering, farming in later societies, travel, childcare, food preparation, and countless other tasks require energy and timing. But timing is often linked to light and environment rather than minute-by-minute precision. Scholars bicker over how much the rise of artificial lighting eventually changes sleep. Oil lamps, candles, gas lighting, and later electric light gradually extend evening activity. Factories and fixed work schedules impose new forms of time discipline. Urban life increases nighttime illumination, as nights become brighter and schedules more standardized. Consolidated sleep may become increasingly practical or expected in some populations, yet the transition is not uniform. People still nap, people still wake at night, people still sleep in multiple periods. The modern 8-hour block is common as an ideal, but human sleep remains flexible. You can see traces of this flexibility in everyday life. Some people naturally wake for a while around 3 in the morning. Some sleep early and rise before dawn. Some stay awake late, some nap in the afternoon. Parents of infants sleep in fragments whether they appreciate the historical significance or not. Shift workers sleep at unconventional hours. Illness changes patterns. Age changes patterns. The body adapts constantly. Ancient sleep likely contains this same diversity. You begin to feel drowsy again. The change arrives slowly. Your thoughts lose sharp edges. The question of segmented sleep becomes less academic when your own eyes grow heavy. Perhaps this is how a second sleep begins. Not on command, not because you decide the interval is finished. The body simply turns inward again. You pull the covering closer. The air feels colder now. Your breathing slows before sleep takes you. Another possibility comes to mind. Maybe waking at night is not always an interruption. Maybe it is part of the rhythm. A night can have more than one shape. It can contain conversation and silence, rest and wakefulness, dreaming and thinking, stillness and small tasks. The human body does not necessarily demand one uninterrupted descent into unconsciousness. It may accept a softer pattern, down into sleep, up into quiet wakefulness, then down again. Historians still argue whether segmented sleep should be understood as a widespread ancient human norm, a later historical custom shaped by long nights, or simply one pattern among many. The evidence refuses to give a single universal answer, and perhaps that uncertainty fits the ancient night rather well. There is no universal clock, no universal bedroom, no universal schedule. Only bodies responding to darkness in different places and different seasons. You close your eyes, thought drifts away. The wakeful interval loses importance as soon as sleep returns. There is no need to label it, no need to count it, no need to worry about whether the night has been perfect. The darkness remains. Your body has rested once. Now it begins to rest again, and somewhere between the first surrender to sleep and the quiet approach of morning, the night feels less like a single solid block and more like a slow tide, carrying you outward, returning you briefly to shore, then drawing you gently away once more. You open your eyes because of a dream. For a few seconds, the darkness around you feels connected to whatever you were just seeing. Perhaps you were walking through a forest that did not exist. Perhaps someone long dead was speaking to you. Perhaps an animal appeared where no animal should be. The images vanish quickly, but the feeling remains. Your heart beats a little faster. You listen. Nothing unusual moves nearby. Still, the dream has changed the night. To ancient people, dreams are not always treated as meaningless scraps of imagination. They can feel like visits, warnings, messages, fragments of another world that becomes accessible only when the waking mind goes quiet. You lie still, surrounded by sleeping companions, and the darkness seems larger than it did before. The night is already mysterious because so much happens beyond sight. Dreaming adds another layer. Now even your own mind contains places you cannot control. You close your eyes again, but curiosity keeps you awake. What was that animal doing there? Why did someone familiar look much younger? Why did a path lead toward water when you know there is no river nearby? Modern people can dismiss these questions as products of memory and brain activity. Ancient people often live in cultures where dreams are woven into explanations of illness, luck, death, hunting, weather, ancestry, and the unseen world. The sleeping mind may be considered vulnerable or powerful, sometimes both. Records confirm that many early civilizations take dreams seriously enough to record and interpret them. In ancient Mesopotamia, dreams can be treated as omens or divine messages. In ancient Egypt, surviving texts include collections of dream interpretations, where particular dream images are associated with favourable or unfavourable outcomes. Later, Greek and Roman writers also discussed dreams as signs, warnings, bodily disturbances, or messages from gods. The details differ across cultures, but the larger pattern is familiar. People wake from vivid dreams and ask what they mean. You sit up slightly, the air is cool against your face, a sleeper nearby murmurs something unintelligible. Perhaps they are dreaming too. You wonder whether ancient communities discuss dreams in the morning. Almost certainly, in many places, they do. A frightening dream may be told immediately. A strange dream involving an animal or deceased relative may be remembered carefully. Some dreams may influence decisions. Should a journey begin today? Should a hunt be postponed? Should someone perform a ritual? Should an offering be made? The answers depend entirely on the beliefs of the people around you, and beliefs can make sleep feel less private than modern assumptions suggest. Your dream may belong partly to the community, if it seems important. Others may want to hear it, an elder may interpret it, a ritual specialist may be consulted. Someone may decide that your dream says more about dinner than destiny. Even in the ancient world, not everyone necessarily agrees. Human skepticism is almost certainly older than philosophy textbooks. The distinction between ordinary dreams and significant dreams becomes important. A strange jumble of daily memories might be ignored. A vivid dream containing a specific ancestor, god, animal, or repeated symbol may attract attention. Repetition matters. Emotion matters. Timing matters. Who experiences the dream matters. A respected leader's dream may carry more weight than the dream of someone known for eating too much and sleeping badly. One curious footnote comes from ancient dream manuals, where interpretation can become wonderfully specific. An image that seems harmless to you might be treated as fortunate. Another ordinary activity might be considered ominous. Human beings develop elaborate systems for making sense of dreams. sometimes assigning meanings to everything from eating particular foods to seeing certain animals. It is bureaucracy for the subconscious. You imagine trying to remember the details correctly. Was the bird facing east? Was the water clear? Was the stranger smiling? Did you climb the wall or merely stand beside it? Suddenly your dream becomes an administrative problem. Still, the seriousness behind these interpretations is easy to understand. Dreams feel real while they happen. You experience fear without physical danger. You speak with people who are absent. You enter places impossible to visit. You wake carrying emotions that can last for hours. Without modern neuroscience, why should such experiences automatically be considered meaningless? The explanation that another realm has touched you may feel perfectly reasonable within an ancient worldview. You lie back down. Your hand brushes a small object near your sleeping place. Perhaps it is a charm, perhaps a bead, carved token, shell, tooth, or small figure. Objects like these can carry protective meaning. They may be worn during the day and kept close during sleep. Night is a vulnerable time. The body becomes still. Awareness weakens. Dreams arrive. Many ancient cultures therefore develop rituals intended to protect sleepers from harmful forces. You might speak a short prayer, then place an object near the body, mark an entrance, burn aromatic plants, arrange bedding in a particular direction, keep a lamp burning, invoke a deity, call upon an ancestor. The ritual itself may be brief, its effect on the mind may be considerable. A protected sleeper can relax. Confidence changes experience. You hear a soft scraping sound from outside. Someone nearer the entrance wakes instantly. Their head rises. You do not move. The sound comes again, then stops. Night watches do not always require formal guards, but many communities have reasons to maintain vigilance. Livestock, once domesticated, may need protection. Settlements can face theft or attack. Travellers may camp in unfamiliar territory. Fires require attention. City gates in later societies close at night and are monitored. Military camps organise watch periods. Ships require crews awake while others sleep. The darkness creates practical responsibilities. Somebody must remain conscious when others cannot. In your ears, the silence changes into small details. A distant dog barks. An animal shifts. Footsteps sound briefly on packed ground. A low voice asks a question. Another answers. Then stillness returns. You begin to understand the peculiar loneliness of the night watcher. Everyone else has temporarily disappeared into sleep. You remain present. The hours feel longer. Tiny sounds become significant. Cold seems sharper when you cannot retreat beneath a covering. Your task may involve looking for movement, listening for danger, maintaining a flame, or simply being awake enough to raise an alarm. You fight drowsiness. Perhaps you stand. Perhaps you walk a short distance. Perhaps you speak quietly to another watcher. The worst enemy may not be danger, it may be boredom. Watching darkness for hours is not consistently dramatic. Most nights, nothing happens. That is the desired outcome. Yet the mind does not enjoy empty space. When vision provides little information, imagination becomes active. A tree moves. You stare. A shadow seems wrong. You stare again. Something appears to be standing far away, or as you blink, it is gone. Night watch encourages story. Stories encourage caution, and caution can gradually become folklore. Across cultures, nighttime is often populated by spirits, wandering dead, dangerous creatures, shape-changing beings, demons, protective ancestors, and divine presences. These figures differ enormously, but darkness gives all of them a useful stage. You cannot see far. You cannot identify every sound. Sleep alters consciousness. Illness can produce fever dreams. Sleep paralysis can create terrifying sensations of being awake but unable to move. A person may wake with pressure on the chest, a sense of presence, or a shadowy figure nearby. Without a modern medical explanation, such an experience can become powerful evidence of supernatural attack. Scholars bicker for how much ancient night spirit traditions were shaped by experiences such as sleep paralysis, nightmares, and hallucinations during transitions between sleep and waking. The connection is tempting. Modern sleep paralysis can produce remarkably vivid sensations, but ancient beliefs have social, religious, and cultural histories too complex to reduce to a single biological cause. A frightening nighttime experience does not automatically create a demon. Culture provides the language used to understand it. You experience something strange. The community tells you what kind of strange thing it was. Perhaps an ancestor visited. Perhaps a hostile spirit pressed upon you. Perhaps a god sent a warning. Perhaps you simply slept in an awkward position. Interpretation is never isolated from belief. You turn onto your back. For a moment, you cannot move. Your chest feels heavy. Your eyes seem open, although you're unsure whether they truly are. A dark shape stands near the edge of the sleeping space. Panic rises instantly. Then movement returns. You sit up. Nothing is there. To a modern listener, this resembles sleep paralysis. To someone in an ancient society, the explanation may be very different. The experience itself is real, only its meaning changes. You breathe slowly until fear fades. Around you, everyone else remains asleep. It is almost insulting. You have apparently survived an encounter with the unseen world, and nobody has even rolled over. Perhaps this is when you reach for a protective object. A small amulet feels solid in your palm. Cold at first, then warm from your skin. Ancient Egyptians, for example, use amulets for protection in many aspects of life, and protective religious objects can accompany people in intimate daily settings. Mesopotamian households also use incantations and protective figures against feared supernatural threats. Nighttime anxiety is not treated as silly. It is managed with familiar cultural tools. Ritual gives fear a procedure. Do this. Say this. Place this here. Burn this substance. Invoke this name. Then rest. There is comfort in having instructions. You smell something aromatic near the sleeping place. Perhaps herbs are burning gently. The scent drifts through the room. Resin, wood, leaves, bitterness, sweet smoke. Scent can transform a nighttime atmosphere. It also acquires symbolic meaning. Incense rises. Smoke moves where hands cannot reach. The invisible becomes visible for a moment. It is easy to understand why fragrant smoke appears in rituals across many societies. It fills space without needing walls. It marks an ordinary place as temporarily sacred. You watch a thin strand curl upward. Your attention follows it. The act itself becomes calming. Nighttime ritual also creates repetition, the same words, the same gestures, the same object touched before sleep. Repeated actions tell the body that danger is being handled. Whatever the supernatural explanation, the psychological effect may be deeply practical. You know what happens next. The ritual ends. You lie down. Sleep is allowed to come. Dreams, however, remain unpredictable. You may dream of hunting, of falling, of running, of relatives, of animals that speak, of places you visited years ago, or of completely impossible events that make perfect sense until the instant you wake. One dream may be forgotten before sunrise. Another may stay with you for decades. That unevenness helps significant dreams become memorable. People tell them, retell them, attach meaning. A dream can become part of family history. A ruler may claim divine guidance through one. A healer may use one to explain illness. A traveler may change plans because of one. A parent may name a child because of one. The sleeping mind quietly enters waking decisions. Outside, the night watcher changes position. Another person may take their place. A whispered exchange passes through the darkness. Responsibility moves from one pair of eyes to another. You feel safer hearing the voices. The unseen world may remain mysterious, but the visible world is still being watched. That combination defines much of the ancient night. Practical danger and spiritual danger overlap. A strange sound might be an animal, or a thief, or wind, or, depending on what you believe, something that does not belong entirely to the human world. The uncertainty makes ritual and vigilance natural companions. One protects the camp physically, the other protects the mind. You lie still once more. Your breathing slows. The charm beside your hand no longer feels necessary, but you leave it there. A final murmur comes from the watcher, then silence. You do not know what you will dream next. You do not know whether dreams come from memory, gods, ancestors, fear, food, illness, or some hidden chamber of the mind. Ancient people debate such questions in their own ways, just as later thinkers will. But for now, certainty is not required. The night does not explain itself. It simply surrounds you. You close your eyes. Somewhere beyond waking thought, images begin to gather. And while one person remains awake beneath the dark sky, watching the ordinary world, your mind slips quietly into another. You lower yourself onto something that feels immediately different beneath your weight. It is not bare earth. It is not a loose heap of grass. It is not a folded hide arranged wherever space happens to allow. You are lying on a structure. The sleeping surface stands above the floor. For the first time, the bed begins to look like furniture. The change seems simple, almost obvious once you experience it. Lift the sleeper away from cold ground. Create a defined place for rest. Keep bedding cleaner. Make it harder for crawling insects to reach you. Give the body a surface that can be prepared, repaired, decorated, and carried into daily life as an object with social meaning. The bed becomes more than somewhere you happen to sleep. It becomes something you own. You reach down and touch the frame. Wood, smooth in places, rough in others. The joints have been shaped deliberately. A woven surface stretches across the middle, perhaps made from cord, strips of leather, reeds, or plant fibre. The frame creaks when you move, not loudly, just enough to remind you that ancient furniture has its opinions. Raised beds appear in several early civilizations, and their form varies greatly with wealth, climate, material, and local custom. In ancient Egypt, beds are often built from wood and raised on legs. Some surviving examples are surprisingly elegant. The sleeping surface may slope slightly. Frames can be fitted with woven supports. More elaborate beds belonging to wealthy households may include decorated legs, carved details, or animal forms. Records confirm that Egyptian furniture makers produced sophisticated beds, stools, chests, and chairs, particularly for people with the resources to afford skilled craftsmanship. Your own bed may not be royal. That is worth remembering. Museums preserve beautiful objects because beautiful objects survive, are collected, and attract attention. Ordinary people usually sleep with simpler possessions. A labourer does not necessarily drift into sleep beneath gold decoration while servants adjust linen. A modest household may use a simple wooden frame, a mat, or whatever bedding is affordable and practical. Ancient comfort is divided by class. The rich can buy softness. The poor become creative. You settle onto a woven surface. It gives slightly under your body. That flexibility matters. A rigid platform presses back against every bone. A woven support distributes weight. Add a mat or folded textile, and the bed becomes noticeably more comfortable. The improvement does not require anything resembling a modern spring mattress. A few layers can transform the experience. Reeds, wool, linen, leather, straw, whatever can be obtained, cleaned, dried, and arranged. You run your hand over a linen cloth. It feels cool and light. Egypt becomes especially famous for linen produced from flax. The fabric can be fine, smooth, and valuable. Clean linen has practical appeal in a hot climate. It breathes well. It can be washed. It can be layered. Among wealthier households, bedding may include carefully woven sheets and coverings. You can imagine the small pleasure of climbing onto fresh cloth at the end of a dusty day. Some things need no historical explanation. Clean bedding simply feels good. Your head reaches another object. It is hard, very hard. This is not a pillow in the modern fluffy sense. It is a headrest. Ancient Egyptian headrests can be made from wood, stone, ivory, or other materials, with a curved upper section designed to support the neck or head. At first glance, the object seems absurd. You stare at it. It stares back, metaphorically. With the confidence of a civilization that has no intention of apologizing for its furniture, you try it carefully. Your neck rests in the curved support. The head remains elevated. The arrangement may help air circulate around the body. It can keep the head away from insects on the sleeping surface. It can also protect elaborate hairstyles. A curious footnote appears here. In societies where hair can be carefully arranged, braided, oiled, dressed, or extended with wigs, sleeping without crushing the work becomes surprisingly important. A soft pillow may flatten everything. A narrow headrest does not. Ancient beauty standards have apparently discovered a way to make bedtime slightly less relaxing. The headrest can also carry symbolic meaning. Some are decorated with protective images or inscriptions. Sleep is not viewed purely as a mechanical necessity. It remains a vulnerable state. So even furniture can participate in protection. You leave Egypt in your imagination and enter a Mesopotamian household. The atmosphere changes. Walls are built from mud brick. Rooms may surround courtyards. The climate can be hot, and daily life adapts to intense sun. Sleeping arrangements depend strongly on season. A room that is comfortable in winter may feel stifling in summer. Roofs become useful living spaces. You climb carefully upward. The roof is flat. The air above is cooler than inside. Night stretches over the city. Other roofs are visible nearby. Voices travel through the darkness. You may sleep outdoors on the roof when heat makes enclosed rooms uncomfortable. This is one of those simple adjustments that makes ancient urban life suddenly easier to imagine. A house does not have one permanent sleeping location. You follow temperature. In cool weather, you move inside. In hot weather, you seek air. Beds, mats, and blankets can move with you. Ancient architecture and sleep work together. Thick walls protect against heat during the day. Courtyards improve airflow. Flat roofs provide extra space. The sleeping environment changes from season to season. Furniture becomes portable enough to support that flexibility. You lie beneath an open sky while surrounded by a city. This is not the silence of an isolated camp. You hear people, animals, doors, footsteps, someone speaking on another roof. Perhaps a dog objects loudly to something invisible. Perhaps a donkey decides that midnight is the appropriate moment for a public announcement. Urban sleep introduces its own soundtrack. Still, the raised bed has advantages. Dust remains below. The surface is defined. Textiles can be spread neatly. Personal belongings can be kept nearby. The bed begins to create a small zone of identity within a shared household. In wealthy Mesopotamian society, beds can also become markers of status. Texts mention furniture as valuable property. Household goods can be listed in inventories. Fine textiles may represent significant wealth. A luxurious bed tells visitors something about the household even if nobody says a word. Comfort becomes visible. The bed is no longer simply where you disappear at night. It can become part of social display. Scholars bicker over exactly how common specialized raised beds were among ordinary households in different ancient cities, because written and archaeological evidence tends to preserve elite life more clearly than everyday poverty. A palace inventory tells you what the wealthy own. It does not automatically tell you what a family in a small neighborhood room sleeps on. This creates an old problem. History often preserves luxury more successfully than normality. You are shown carved furniture. The simple mat has vanished. You are shown imported wood. The local reed bundle has decayed. You are shown royal chambers. The crowded household room leaves fewer dramatic remains. So you must imagine ancient sleep across a wide social range. At one end, finely built furniture, at the other, mats on floors. But between them, countless combinations. The Greek world brings another shift in atmosphere. You enter a house where couches serve more than one purpose. The Greek klein, a raised couch or bed, can be used for sleeping, resting, and reclining during meals in certain social settings. Furniture becomes multifunctional. You do not necessarily need separate objects for sitting, eating, resting, and sleeping. A couch can change role through the day. You recline on one side. The frame lifts you comfortably off the floor. Cushions and textiles soften the surface. In wealthier surroundings, painted or decorated furniture may create an elegant interior. But again, class matters. A poor household lives more simply. The ancient Mediterranean does not consist entirely of philosophers reclining on beautifully arranged couches while discussing existence. Someone has to wash the cups. Someone has to sweep the floor. Someone has to find out why the lamp smells strange. The bed belongs inside that ordinary rhythm. Greek and later Roman sleeping furniture can be constructed with wooden frames and woven supports. Mattresses or padded layers may contain wool, straw, or other stuffing. The exact combination depends on wealth. A prosperous sleeper may enjoy thicker padding and fine textiles. A poorer one may use a simple mattress stuffed with inexpensive material. You press down on a wool-filled layer. It is lumpy. One area rises more than another. You adjust it. Ancient mattresses need maintenance. Stuffing shifts. Fibers compress. Moisture collects. Bedding must be aired. Parasites can hide inside. The invention of a bed does not defeat housekeeping. It merely gives housekeeping more surfaces to worry about. Oddly enough, wealth can sometimes create new sleep problems. Heavy hangings, thick cushions, elaborate textiles, and padded furnishings provide more places for insects to live. Comfort attracts company. Fleas and bedbugs are not impressed by social rank, if anything. A wealthy household may provide them with excellent accommodation. The ancient bed therefore sits inside a constant struggle between softness and cleanliness. You want thick bedding because it feels warm and comfortable. You also want bedding that can be shaken, dried, beaten, exposed to sun, or replaced. Sunlight becomes a useful cleaning tool. Textiles can be carried outside. Mattresses can be aired. Reeds and stuffing can be renewed. The bed is maintained through labor that is easy to overlook. Someone spins fiber, someone weaves cloth, someone washes linen, someone repairs straps, someone replaces stuffing, someone carves the frame, someone carries it. A comfortable night rests on many hours of daytime work. You run your hand over the edge of the bed again. The craftsmanship becomes more visible when you think this way. A straight piece of timber must be selected, cut, smoothed, joined. The support must be stretched. Textiles must be produced from raw material. Flax requires processing. Wool requires cleaning and spinning. Reeds require gathering. Even a simple sheet represents time. The bed is a concentration of labor. It is also becoming a private symbol. In some ancient societies, beds appear in marriage customs, inheritance, household inventories, and funerary contexts. A bed can belong to a particular person. It can mark adulthood or partnership. It can be included among valuable possessions. A sleeping place gains emotional significance because repeated nights accumulate there. Illness happens there. Children may be born nearby. People recover there. Couples talk there. Families mourn there. The bed witnesses ordinary life simply by remaining still. You lie back and notice the elevation once more. Being raised changes your relationship with the room. The floor feels farther away. Drafts may still reach you, but dampness is reduced. Small crawling creatures have a more difficult route, though certainly not an impossible one. The sleeping surface feels intentional. This is perhaps the largest transformation. Rest has acquired architecture at the scale of the body. A frame surrounds you. Textiles soften you. A headrest supports you. The bed says, in its quiet wooden way, that this is where sleep belongs. You adjust a folded cloth near your shoulder. The room is dim. A lamp burns weakly. Its oil scent mixes with wood and linen. Outside, the city continues in distant fragments. A cart, perhaps, a voice, a dog. Then quiet. Your body settles into the woven support. The frame gives one faint creak and becomes still. The bed is not modern. It is not perfectly soft. It has no springs, foam, temperature settings, or elaborate promises about orthopedic support. Yet it has already crossed an important threshold. Human beings are no longer merely finding a place to sleep. They are building one. A tiny movement near your ankle wakes you. Not a predator, not a storm, not even another sleeper turning over. Something smaller, much smaller. You reach down instinctively and scratch. The sensation disappears, then returns somewhere else. Ancient sleep has many enemies, and some of the most persistent are almost too small to see clearly in the dark. You're surrounded by insects. They live in walls, bedding, clothing, hair, floor cracks, animal nests, stored food, and the countless little spaces that human beings create whenever they settle somewhere for long enough. A sleeping body is warm, still, convenient. To certain creatures, you're less a person than an overnight dining opportunity. Mosquitoes circle near exposed skin. Fleas jump from animals or bedding. Lice remain close to the body. Ticks can attach themselves after a day spent moving through vegetation. Bed bugs, where present, hide in cracks and emerge when darkness arrives. You slap gently at your forearm. Nothing. A few seconds later, another itch appears. This is perhaps the least majestic part of ancient history. Kings, farmers, soldiers, artisans, children, travellers, priests, and shepherds all share one surprisingly democratic inconvenience. Bugs do not care about status. You might own a carved bed with polished legs and fine linen, but if a tiny parasite has moved into the frame, your luxurious night may become a long session of scratching and quiet resentment. Records confirm that ancient people struggle constantly with parasites and household pests. Archaeological remains have preserved lice, flea traces, insect fragments, and other evidence showing that close contact between humans, animals, textiles, and dwellings creates ideal conditions for infestation. Ancient medical and household traditions also include methods for dealing with itching, insects, and vermin. Some methods probably help, some almost certainly do not. You can imagine the range: herbs, smoke, oils, combs, ash, cleaning, sunlight, prayers, strong smells, and perhaps one relative who insists that a particular remedy works because their grandmother used it, despite everyone continuing to be bitten. Human history contains many things that change very slowly. Household advice is one of them. A curious footnote appears in the effort to repel insects with aromatic substances. Certain plants, oils, and resins produce odours that mosquitoes and other insects may dislike, at least temporarily. People can rub substances onto skin, burn plants near sleeping areas, or include fragrant material among bedding. The result may smell pleasant or extremely strong, possibly both. You inhale cautiously. The air carries smoke, crushed herbs, human bodies, and something bitter that someone has declared useful. It is difficult to know whether the insects are being repelled or merely offended. Either way, the night continues. You pull a covering higher. That protects part of your skin, but creates another problem. Heat. Ancient sleepers are constantly balancing one discomfort against another. Cover your arms and mosquitoes have fewer places to land. Cover too much in warm weather and you sweat. Open the bedding again and the insects return with enthusiasm. There is no perfect setting. You negotiate. A shoulder exposed, then covered. 1 foot outside, then quickly inside again after something lands on it. The body becomes its own tiny defensive fortress. Noise joins the battle. At first, you notice the obvious sounds. Snoring, someone muttering, a baby fussing. But an ancient night can be far louder than modern nostalgia suggests. In a village, dogs bark, donkeys call, cattle shift. Goats complain about matters only goats understand. Chickens stir unexpectedly. People cough through thin walls. Someone arrives late. Someone wakes early. A ceramic vessel is moved and scrapes against the floor. A door hinge complains. Wind pushes against shutters or woven coverings. Rain taps on roofing. There may be no engines, televisions, or traffic. But silence is not guaranteed. You close your eyes. A dog barks once, then again. Another dog answers farther away. A third joins from somewhere beyond the houses. Soon the entire settlement appears to be holding an urgent canine conference. No one asked for this meeting. It happens anyway. You wait. Eventually the dogs lose interest. Quiet returns. Then a rooster makes a very early and deeply incorrect prediction about dawn. You begin to suspect that people in the past did not always enjoy the peaceful nights imagined in paintings. Urban environments can be noisier still. In ancient towns, houses may sit close together along narrow streets. Activity does not end instantly after sunset. Taverns, workshops, religious gatherings, guards, travellers, servants, animals, and late arrivals all produce sound. Some people sleep above shops, others near courtyards. A family living close to a busy route may hear wheels, hooves, footsteps, arguments, songs, and doors well into the night. In Rome, for example, traffic restrictions on heavy-wheeled vehicles during parts of the day could push some transport activity into nighttime hours. The practical goal is to reduce daytime congestion. The unfortunate consequence is that residents may encounter the ancient equivalent of late-night delivery traffic. You lie in an upper room. A cart rattles somewhere below. Wooden wheels strike uneven paving. An animal snorts. A driver calls out. The sound moves slowly past, then fades. Peace returns, briefly. Somebody in the next room starts snoring. You consider whether city life was truly an achievement. The floor creaks. A wooden latch taps against a door. You reach out and feel the rough grain of the bed frame. Ancient materials produce their own nighttime noises. Wood swells. Leather straps stretch. Reed mats crackle. Roof beams shift slightly as temperature changes. Pottery knocks against stone. Nothing is truly silent because buildings are never truly still. Cold introduces another problem. In some climates, nighttime temperature falls sharply even after a warm day. Stone walls hold coolness, floors become cold, air settles into low spaces. You wake because your feet have become uncomfortable. They seem to belong to someone else. You curl your toes. The sensation returns slowly. Ancient heating is uneven. A brazier or hearth can warm a room, but the heat rarely spreads evenly through large spaces. Stand near the source, and you're comfortable. Move farther away and the temperature drops. Many houses are built with ventilation in mind because smoke must escape. Unfortunately, warm air is also very good at escaping. You pull wool closer around your shoulders. Wool is valuable because it insulates even when conditions are imperfect. Layering helps. Clothing may remain on during sleep. Extra blankets matter in colder regions. Sleeping rooms can be kept small because smaller spaces are easier to warm. Curtains or hangings may reduce drafts in wealthier homes. Beds can be positioned away from doors. Every choice is practical. Yet cold has a stubborn talent for discovering gaps. A draught slides beneath a covering. Another finds your neck. You tuck the fabric more tightly. Now your feet are warm, but your face is cold. The ancient thermostat consists mostly of moving fabric around until nothing feels terrible. Heat can be equally difficult. In warmer climates, enclosed rooms trap warmth accumulated during the day. Stone or mud brick buildings may remain hot long after sunset. You turn repeatedly. The bedding feels too thick. Air barely moves. Your skin sticks to the surface beneath you. There is no electric fan, no air conditioner, no cold bottle waiting nearby unless someone has carefully stored water in a cooler place. You depend on architecture, open windows, courtyards, roof sleeping, thin fabrics, shade during the day, airflow through doors. Sleeping becomes seasonal engineering. Scholars bicker over exactly how much ancient architectural design is driven specifically by sleep rather than by broader needs such as cooking, storage, security, and daytime comfort. A cool courtyard may improve nighttime rest, but it also serves many other purposes. A roof may be a sleeping place, work area, drying space, and storage surface. Ancient buildings rarely reveal a single purpose neatly. They adapt to daily life as a whole. Smoke makes the problem even more complicated. You notice it first in your throat, a dry irritation, then a faint sting in your eyes. Indoor fires offer warmth and cooking, but without modern chimneys they can fill rooms with smoke and soot. Some structures allow smoke to escape through roof openings. Others rely on doors, vents, gaps, or the slow movement of air. That does not mean the room remains clean. Black deposits gather on surfaces. The smell enters clothing. Hair holds it. Bedding absorbs it. A person sleeping near a hearth may wake with irritated eyes or a cough. The fire solves cold and creates smoke. Again, ancient comfort is a negotiation. You turn your face away from the drifting haze. The air is clearer closer to the floor. Perhaps that helps, perhaps not enough. Long-term smoke exposure can harm health, especially when cooking and heating occur indoors repeatedly. Ancient people may not understand microscopic particles, but they certainly understand the immediate effects. Eyes water, throats burn, children cough, doors are opened when weather allows. Fuel choice matters too. Dry wood burns more cleanly than damp material. Some fuels produce more smoke than others. Skill can reduce the problem without eliminating it. The smell of wax smoke enters another room. A small lamp burns nearby. Oil lamps and candles create their own fumes. Not much from a single flame, perhaps, but enough to add another layer to enclosed air. Light at night is expensive too. Oil must be obtained. Wax requires labour. Wicks need trimming. A lamp that burns while you sleep wastes fuel and adds risk. Most people therefore do not maintain bright rooms through the entire night. Darkness returns naturally. You reach toward the lamp and lower the flame. Shadows grow. The room cools slightly. Your mattress shifts beneath you. This brings you to another ancient inconvenience. Beds themselves require constant maintenance. Straw mattresses compress. Wool clumps. Reed mats break. Leather supports stretch. Ropes loosen. Frames creak. Textiles absorb moisture and odours. You may need to shake bedding, beat it, restuff it, tighten it, dry it, or replace parts of it. A soft sleeping surface is never simply purchased and forgotten. It is work. You wake with a lump beneath your shoulder. You push at the mattress. The lump moves somewhere else. Improvement. Technically, the ancient world has no customer service number to call about uneven filling. You fix it yourself or tolerate it. The choice often depends on how tired you are. A more serious issue arrives with dampness. Rainy climates create persistent moisture. Floodplain settlements can become humid. Coastal air carries salt and damp. Bedding stored near floors absorbs water. Mold grows. Fabric smells sour. Leather changes texture. Wood can warp. A dry sleeping place becomes a constant achievement rather than an automatic condition. You lift a mat in daylight and expose it to sun. Warmth drives away moisture. Sunlight discourages some pests. Air freshens the fibres. This routine matters because ancient homes do not separate cleanliness from survival. Dry bedding is warmer. Cleaner bedding contains fewer insects. Aired rooms smell better. Maintained furniture lasts longer. Housework improves sleep directly. You return to darkness. Your ears adjust. Somewhere outside, a bell sounds faintly. Perhaps it marks a watch period in a later settlement. Perhaps a guard calls a time signal. Human beings gradually develop ways to divide the night, especially in organized towns, military camps, monasteries, ships, and administrative centers. Night acquires structure through sound, a call, a bell, a horn. People who need to wake do not require personal clocks. The community can announce time collectively. Of course, this is excellent news if you need to rise. Less excellent if you do not. A distant signal travels through walls and reaches your bed anyway. You open one eye. Ancient public timekeeping has successfully included you without permission. Then the sound fades. Another itch appears near your wrist. You scratch. A floorboard settles. The person nearby rolls over. A draft moves beneath the door. Your pillow feels slightly wrong. Something outside makes a noise that may be a cat, a rat, or a small creature engaged in private business. You could list the irritations endlessly, yet exhaustion remains powerful. Human beings can sleep in conditions that seem impossible when those conditions are normal. The brain learns familiar sounds. The body adapts to firm surfaces. Routine reduces attention to recurring discomfort. You stop noticing smokers intensely. You no longer wake for every animal call. The creaking frame becomes part of the room. Even insects may only disturb you intermittently. Perfect comfort is not required for sleep. It helps, but tiredness has its own authority. You shift one final time. The blanket settles correctly. The air is cooler now. The room smells of wood, cloth, smoke, and night air drifting through a small opening. A distant animal makes one last complaint. Nobody answers. The mattress remains lumpy. The walls remain imperfect. The insects have not signed a peace agreement. Still, your body relaxes. Ancient sleep is not a romantic silence under endless stars. It is full of scratches, coughs, rattles, drafts, heat, smells, hard edges, and small annoyances. And somehow, night after night, people sleep anyway. Moonlight stretches across the ground and turns familiar paths into pale ribbons. You stand outside while much of the settlement lies quiet. The night is not fully dark. A bright moon hangs above the roofs, enough to reveal the edges of walls, baskets near doorways, animals shifting in their enclosures, and the faint outline of distant fields. Under these conditions, nighttime becomes useful. You can move, you can work, you can travel. You can finish a task that daylight did not allow. The ancient night is not simply a long pause between sunset and sunrise. It contains its own activities, shaped by season, moonlight, household duties, weather, hunger, religion, and the demands of work. You begin walking. The earth beneath your feet is cooler than it was during the day. That alone can make nighttime movement attractive in hot climates. A journey that feels exhausting beneath strong sun may become easier after dusk. Caravans, shepherds, travellers, messengers, and people moving between nearby communities sometimes take advantage of cooler hours. Animals may tolerate the journey better too. Heat drains energy. Night restores it. You hear sandals scrape softly against packed ground. Ahead, another person carries a small lamp, but the moon is bright enough that the flame is almost unnecessary. Your eyes adjust. The world looks flat and silver. Colours disappear. Distance becomes harder to judge. A shrub may look closer than it is. A ditch becomes nearly invisible until you reach it. Travel by moonlight requires familiarity. You need to know the path. You need landmarks large enough to recognize in darkness. A hill, a tree, a river bend, a wall. Stars can assist with direction, especially for experienced travelers. But navigation is not effortless. Clouds can erase the sky. Fog changes distance. Moonlight creates shadows that conceal obstacles. Ancient night travel is possible, not magical. You walk carefully. Mainstream historical evidence shows that people in many ancient societies continue working and travelling after sunset when circumstances require it. Military forces march at night to conceal movement or avoid heat. Sailors remain active around the clock. Farmers protect fields and animals. Urban guards patrol streets and gates. Religious ceremonies sometimes occur after dark. Households continue cooking, spinning, caring for children, and preparing for the next day. Nighttime has labour hidden inside it. You return to a household where one small lamp burns. A woman sits near the light with fibre in her hands. Her work is repetitive. Twist, pull, twist again. Spinning can continue after sunset because the movements are familiar. Fine visual work becomes harder in weak illumination, but simple tasks can survive darkness. Someone nearby sorts food, another repairs a strap. A child sleeps in the corner. The household is quieter than during daylight, yet it has not stopped. Artificial light is expensive enough that every flame matters. Oil must be produced or purchased. Animal fat can serve as fuel in some places. Wax is valuable. Wicks need material. Keeping several lamps burning simply to make a room cheerful would be a luxury for many households. So people cluster around limited light. One lamp can serve several pairs of hands. You sit close. The flame produces a surprisingly small circle of usefulness. Beyond it, the room vanishes. Your hands are visible. The far wall is not. You can understand why activities become concentrated. Night draws the household inward. Agricultural life creates another kind of nocturnal work. You step outside again and hear animals shifting nearby. Livestock do not always organize their needs around convenient human hours. A birth may begin at night. A sick animal may require watching. Predators may approach enclosures. Animals can escape. Something frightened by thunder can create chaos very quickly. Someone has to check them. You enter a pen. Warm animal breath meets the cool air. Straw rustles beneath your feet. A sheep turns its head toward you, decides you're uninteresting, and resumes chewing. A goat watches with considerably more suspicion. Goats have apparently never believed that humans should conduct inspections without explaining themselves. Shepherding can involve sleeping close to animals or remaining alert when danger is likely. Night sounds provide information. A sudden burst of movement matters. Repeated barking matters. Silence can matter too. You learn the ordinary sounds so you can notice unusual ones. Agriculture also follows seasons that ignore human preferences. Harvest can create extremely long working days. When crops are ready and weather threatens, people may continue labouring into twilight or begin before dawn. Certain tasks depend on temperature, others depend on water. In regions where irrigation systems distribute water according to schedules, a household may receive access at inconvenient hours. If your turn comes at night, you go at night. The field does not care that you're sleepy. You walk beside a channel. Water glints under moonlight. A gate or barrier is adjusted. Flow changes. Someone waits nearby to make sure the water reaches the correct area. This kind of labour can break sleep into fragments. You work, return home, rest, rise again. The exact rhythm depends on local necessity. Scholars bicker over how widespread routine nocturnal agricultural labour was in different ancient regions, because surviving records often emphasise taxation, land ownership, and harvest totals more clearly than the ordinary hour-by-hour experience of workers. A written account may tell you how much grain a field produced. It rarely tells you that someone stood ankle-deep in mud at midnight, annoyed by mosquitoes. Yet practical demands strongly suggest that agricultural schedules sometimes extend into darkness. You follow another sound, a baby crying, inside a house, a caregiver wakes. Nighttime care is work too, though history often records it poorly. Feeding, soothing, cleaning, holding, listening. A baby may wake repeatedly. A toddler may be ill. An older child may have a nightmare. Someone must respond. The person who does so does not stop being tired simply because their labour leaves no monument. You sit near a mother nursing an infant. The room is dark enough that faces are barely visible. The infant settles. The caregiver remains awake a while longer. There is no clock to mark how long. She listens to breathing, adjusts fabric, then lowers herself carefully. This quiet labour repeats across countless ancient nights. Much of social history hides here, not in battles, not in royal decrees, in interrupted sleep. Care work shapes how people experience night. The elderly may also require help. The sick may need water, someone with fever may wake confused, an injured person may need repositioning. A household can contain several sleepers whose rest depends on somebody else's wakefulness. The night distributes fatigue unevenly. You may sleep deeply while another person rises 3 times. By morning, both of you technically spent the same hours indoors. Your bodies tell very different stories. Moonlight also changes social life. On bright nights, people can gather outside more easily. A courtyard that disappears into darkness during a moonless night becomes usable. Conversations continue. Music may be played. Young people linger longer. Neighbours visit. Children resist sleep with renewed confidence. A full moon can make night feel temporarily generous. Oddly enough, some traditional communities time social gatherings, journeys, fishing, hunting, or ceremonies partly around bright lunar nights because the extra natural light makes movement easier. The moon becomes a practical lantern that nobody has to refill. Of course, it is not particularly reliable. Clouds arrive. Phases change. The moon rises at different times. And unlike a lamp, it refuses all requests for adjustment. Still, its presence can alter the feel of an entire evening. You stand in a courtyard where people talk softly. The walls around you remain dark, but faces catch enough light to appear. Someone tells a story. Someone laughs too loudly. A child is told to settle down. A dog crosses the open space and collapses near a doorway. The night becomes social rather than silent. Religious life can also extend into darkness. You hear a distant rhythm, perhaps a drum, perhaps chanting. Many ancient societies hold ceremonies tied to lunar phases, seasonal festivals, vigils, funerary customs, or specific sacred calendars. Some rituals deliberately use darkness. Torches become dramatic. Stars become visible. The moon itself may hold religious meaning. A procession at night can transform familiar streets. The ordinary world changes because light changes. You join a group moving slowly. Small lamps flicker. Oil scent mixes with dust and incense. The procession is quiet at first. Then voices rise together. Night gives the ceremony privacy from ordinary work. It also gives it atmosphere. Shadows make statues seem larger. Firelight makes gold gleam. Smoke thickens the air. A temple entrance appears more imposing when everything beyond it is black. Religious authorities understand the emotional power of darkness long before anyone invents theatre lighting. You move onward. Fishing offers another reason to remain awake. In some environments, particular species are easier to catch at night. Tides matter, moonlight matters, water temperature matters. The behavior of fish changes after sunset. You step carefully into a small boat. The wood feels cold beneath your hand. The water is almost black. A lamp may be used to attract certain fish or illuminate nearby water. Nets can be set or checked. Lines can be lowered. Night fishing requires skill because the margin for error becomes smaller. A dropped tool disappears. A sudden wave is harder to see. Shore feels farther away. Yet for communities depending on water, the night can be productive. The sea does not adopt a daytime schedule merely for human convenience. Neither do rivers. Neither do tides. Travellers face similar pressures. You might leave before sunset and continue into darkness because the next water source is still ahead. Stopping too early can be dangerous. A familiar road may be safer at night than an exposed camp. In desert regions, cooler temperatures can strongly favour movement during darker hours. Animals carrying loads conserve energy. People avoid the worst heat. The night becomes part of transportation strategy. You hear bells attached to animals. Soft metal sounds move through darkness. A caravan passes slowly. Shapes emerge from the moonlight, then disappear again. Someone speaks quietly to keep animals moving. Nobody is rushing. Night travel rewards steady pace. One scandalous aside, from the perspective of anyone who prefers bedtime to commerce, is that merchants can also exploit darkness simply because money does not become tired. A shipment arrives late. Goods must be unloaded. Travellers seek lodging. Animals require feeding. A gatekeeper is awakened. Someone complains. Someone pays. The ancient economy continues with very little respect for sleep. Cities amplify this effect. In a large settlement, there is almost always someone awake. Guards, bakers, servants, innkeepers, labourers, travellers, people caring for the sick, people attending ceremonies, people drinking, people arguing, people quietly doing things they would prefer not to explain the next morning. Night creates anonymity. Streets become less supervised in some places and more heavily guarded in others. Authorities may restrict movement after dark. Gates can close. Patrols may question strangers. Fire danger becomes a major concern because crowded settlements contain wooden roofs, oil lamps, workshops, cooking fires, and narrow streets. A careless flame can threaten many households. Night watch, therefore, serves the city as much as the individual. You hear footsteps. A patrol passes. The sound of sandals on stone grows louder, then fades. Perhaps they carry lamps, perhaps weapons. Perhaps they are mostly hoping nothing happens before their shift ends. A city at night is not sleeping. It is breathing more slowly. You return to the countryside as clouds pass across the moon. Darkness deepens instantly. The change is dramatic. A moment ago, the path was clear. Now you can barely see your own feet. You stop. This is why moonlight activity remains conditional. Natural light can encourage movement, but it can vanish. People who regularly work or travel at night develop habits around uncertainty. Carry a lamp. Know the route. Travel with others. Listen carefully. Avoid unnecessary risk. Wait if necessary. No agreement has been reached on whether full moon nights consistently caused ancient people to sleep less, because cultural habits can matter as much as available light. Some communities may use bright night actively. Others may preserve regular rest despite them. Temperature, safety, season, and work all complicate the picture. The moon offers opportunity. Humans decide what to do with it. Clouds move away. The landscape returns. You can see fields again. The night is beginning to thin. Not sunrise yet, but a subtle shift has started. The air feels different. A few early birds make tentative sounds. Someone in a nearby house rises quietly. Their work begins before full daylight. Perhaps they grind grain. Perhaps they prepare food. Perhaps they need to reach a field early. One person's morning begins while another person's night is still unfinished. That overlap may be the truest picture of ancient nighttime life. There is no single hour when everyone stops. Labour fades gradually. Care continues. Travel continues. Ceremony continues. Animals demand attention. Moonlight invites movement. Season stretches schedules. The sleeping world is never entirely asleep. You stand beneath the paling sky. A final lamp is extinguished. Its smoke curls once and disappears. Some people are only now settling down. Others are already rising. Night has carried work, care, travel, worship, conversation, and long stretches of ordinary human effort. And as darkness slowly gives way, you realize that ancient sleep is shaped not only by the need for rest, but by everything that refuses to wait until morning. Morning leaves evidence. Not much, perhaps, but enough. You stand in the pale light of an archaeological site and look down at a patch of earth that once held sleeping bodies. Nothing here resembles a bedroom now. There is no pillow waiting patiently for discovery. No blanket remains neatly folded. No ancient sleeper has left a helpful note explaining exactly when they closed their eyes. Instead, there are traces. A dark stain in the soil, a concentration of ash, microscopic plant remains, a worn patch of floor, fragments of woven fibre, a wooden fitting preserved under unusual conditions, tiny parasites, a line of stones, the position of a hearth, bones left in one part of a shelter but not another. The evidence of ancient sleep arrives indirectly. You have to read absence as carefully as presence. Archaeologists face a difficult problem because sleep itself does not fossilize. A person can spend thousands of nights resting in one place and leave almost nothing recognizable behind. Stone tools survive because stone is stubborn. Pottery survives because fired clay resists decay. Metal objects sometimes endure, but grass bedding disappears. Wood rots. Leather breaks down. Textiles vanish. Human routines dissolve much faster than monuments. This makes the history of sleep unusually intimate and unusually elusive. You're trying to reconstruct something everyone does, yet almost nobody deliberately records. Mainstream archaeological research confirms that ancient sleeping environments can sometimes be identified through combinations of plant residues, hearths, floor organization, furniture remains, textiles, and traces of repeated occupation. No single clue tells the entire story. A patch of grass might be bedding, or storage material, or animal fodder. A raised platform might have supported sleepers, or objects. Interpretation depends on context. You kneel near a thin layer of compressed vegetation. Under magnification, the remains reveal particular plant species. Some were gathered deliberately, perhaps because they were soft, perhaps because they were abundant, perhaps because their smell discouraged insects. The ancient sleeper never writes down the reason. You must infer it. This is where archaeology becomes less like treasure hunting and more like careful detective work conducted with extremely old dust. You move to another excavation. Here, researchers study tiny chemical traces. Residues in soil can reveal burning. Pollen can identify plants. Microscopic fragments can show what once covered a floor. Parasites preserved in sediments may indicate how closely people lived with animals or how often bedding was replaced. Even human teeth and bones can contribute clues about health, diet, workload, and disease, all of which influence sleep. A person suffering chronic pain probably does not rest like someone in excellent health. A community facing food shortages experiences different nights from one living through abundance. Sleep belongs to the entire body. You cannot isolate it neatly from the rest of life. Anthropology offers another window. You sit quietly at the edge of a living community far removed from industrial lighting and standardized work schedules. Researchers sometimes observe sleep in societies where people remain closely exposed to natural temperatures, sunlight, communal life, and seasonal rhythms. These observations are valuable. They show what human sleep can look like under conditions unlike those of modern cities. But caution matters. No living society is a frozen copy of the Stone Age. Every present-day community has its own history, its own neighbours, its own economy, its own beliefs, its own contact with wider political and technological worlds. You cannot simply observe a hunter-gatherer community today and announce that prehistoric humans behaved identically. That would turn real people into museum exhibits. Instead, anthropological research offers possibilities. It shows flexibility. Some groups sleep in compact nighttime periods, some nap, some wake often, some sleep communally. Temperature can influence when sleep begins. Social activity can delay bedtime. Age can stagger sleeping schedules. Light matters. But light is not the only factor. These patterns reveal something important about the human body. It is adaptable, far more adaptable than many rigid modern sleep rules suggest. You may prefer routine, but biology can accommodate variation. Season changes sleep, parenthood changes sleep, age changes sleep, work changes sleep, illness changes sleep, culture changes expectations about what counts as a normal night. Ancient evidence does not reveal one perfect ancestral schedule hidden somewhere in the past. It reveals many schedules. That may be slightly disappointing if you hoped archaeology would uncover the official human bedtime. There is no stone tablet reading. Everyone must be asleep by 9:30. Human beings are inconveniently diverse. Written texts add another layer once literacy develops. You enter rooms where scribes, physicians, officials, poets, religious specialists, and ordinary letter writers begin leaving descriptions of nighttime life. Some mention beds, others mention dreams, some complain about noise. Medical texts discuss rest and sleeplessness. Religious writings describe night vigils. Legal records preserve events that happened while people were supposed to be sleeping. Household accounts list furniture and textiles. These writings are invaluable. They're also biased. The people who write are not a perfect sample of the population. Literacy belongs disproportionately to certain social groups. Elite households leave more records than poor ones. Men often appear more frequently in written archives than women. Institutions preserve paperwork better than exhausted parents preserve thoughts about being awakened by children. You read carefully. The silence in a document can matter. A royal text may describe an elaborate bed while saying nothing about the servant who prepares it. A physician may prescribe rest without recording whether the patient shares a room with 6 relatives. A religious text may praise nighttime devotion without mentioning how tired everyone feels by sunrise. Social history grows in these gaps. Scholars remain divided over how confidently written evidence from later civilizations can be used to infer much earlier human sleep. The temptation is understandable. If people in historical societies sleep in multiple periods, perhaps prehistoric people did too. If communal sleeping appears widely, perhaps it reflects deep human tendencies. If people consistently respond to temperature and darkness, perhaps those responses are ancient. Yet similarity is not proof. Culture can reinvent behaviors. Technology alters possibilities. Environment changes circumstances. The safest conclusion is not that there was one ancient sleep pattern. It is that human sleep has always been responsive. You walk into a modern bedroom, the contrast is remarkable. The temperature is controlled. Windows can be sealed. Outside noise can be reduced. A mattress is engineered from multiple materials. A pillow is selected according to preferred sleeping position. Curtains can block dawn. An alarm chooses the waking hour. A glowing screen can deliver bright light directly into your face long after sunset. For perhaps the first time in human existence, enormous numbers of people can create an artificial night almost entirely separated from the natural one. That achievement brings comfort. It also creates new complications. You can stay awake long after darkness. Work can follow you into bed. Messages arrive instantly. Entertainment has no natural stopping point. Artificial light lets evening expand almost without limit. The ancient constraint of darkness has weakened. Your body, however, still responds to light. It still becomes sleepy through biological processes shaped over immense spans of time. Modern technology can change your environment much faster than evolution changes your physiology. This does not mean ancient humans slept perfectly. That romantic idea collapses quickly when you remember hunger, parasites, illness, cold, danger, childcare, hard surfaces, and unpredictable weather. Ancient sleep is not a lost paradise. Modern sleep is not a mistake. Both contain advantages and costs. You stand between them. A curious footnote comes from attempts to recreate older lighting conditions in modern sleep research. When people spend extended periods without electric evening light, their sleep timing can shift surprisingly quickly. The result does not transform them into prehistoric humans. It simply demonstrates that the human circadian system remains responsive to natural patterns of brightness and darkness. Your biology is old even when your bedroom is new. That may be the most useful lesson ancient sleep can offer. Not a command to copy the past. Not a demand to throw away your mattress and sleep beside a smoky hearth. Please do not decide that historical authenticity requires fleas. The lesson is flexibility. Your body evolved to sleep under changing conditions. It can tolerate occasional waking. It can adapt to seasonal differences. It can rest in social environments or solitary ones. It responds to temperature, darkness, safety, routine, and exhaustion. What people consider normal sleep is partly biological and partly cultural. That distinction matters. Modern advice often speaks as though there is one correct night, a specific number of hours, a specific bedtime, a perfectly uninterrupted block. Those targets can be useful, especially when regular schedules support health and daily functioning, but real human sleep has always contained variation. One difficult night does not suddenly place you outside the human experience. Waking briefly is not historically extraordinary. Needing more rest during illness is not strange. Feeling sleepy earlier in winter light can have understandable biological roots. The ancient record encourages humility. You are an adaptable animal living inside a highly engineered environment. Sleep researchers continue debating exactly how industrialization, electric lighting, fixed work schedules, urban noise, and digital technology have altered average sleep across different populations. The answer is complicated because historical measurements are incomplete. People exaggerate. Diaries are selective. Modern studies use different methods. Different societies industrialize at different times. There is no clean line separating natural sleep from artificial sleep. Still, the broad transformation is undeniable. Modern people can choose light at midnight. Ancient people usually cannot. Modern people can heat a room evenly. Ancient people often cannot. Modern people can schedule work by exact minutes. Ancient daily timing is more closely tied to environmental cues in many settings. Technology gives you control. Control also gives you responsibility. You can override tiredness. Again, and again, and again. The body will eventually object. You sit on the edge of a modern bed and place your feet on a clean floor. Nothing crawls over your ankle. The room is quiet. Perhaps surprisingly quiet. A low mechanical hum may come from ventilation. Distant traffic may pass. A phone rests nearby. You can switch darkness on and off instantly. To an ancient sleeper, this room might seem almost supernatural. Softness without straw, warmth without smoke, light without flame, water nearby, a door that closes securely, textiles that can be washed easily, insect screens, medicine, emergency services. The accumulated technology surrounding one night's sleep is enormous, and yet the final act has barely changed. You must become still. You must relinquish awareness. You must trust your surroundings enough to stop monitoring them. That is ancient. The mattress changes. The walls change. The lamps change. The body still has to surrender. You lie down. Muscles gradually release tension. Breathing becomes automatic and quiet. The mind begins losing its grip on orderly thought. This transition links you to people who sleep in caves, huts, courtyards, ships, farms, palaces, crowded rooms, roof terraces, desert camps, mountain shelters, and city apartments across thousands of years. They do not all sleep alike. That is precisely the point. Humanity carries sleep through every environment it enters. Sometimes sleep is long, sometimes fragmented, sometimes solitary, sometimes shared, sometimes peaceful, sometimes interrupted by weather, children, work, dreams, illness, animals, rituals, strangers, heat, cold, or the person nearby who appears determined to snore with historical significance. There is no single ancient night. There are millions of them. Most vanish without record. A person closes their eyes. Hours pass. Morning arrives. No inscription marks the event. No monument is built. Yet those forgotten nights sustain everything that does enter history. People cannot build cities, cross landscapes, raise children, cultivate fields, make tools, tell stories, govern kingdoms, or create art without repeatedly stopping to sleep. Rest is one of history's invisible foundations. You rarely notice it because successful sleep produces almost nothing to observe. No battle, no treaty, no statue, just a body recovering quietly. Perhaps that is why studying ancient sleep feels so intimate. You're not looking at rulers from a distance. You're looking at ordinary human vulnerability. Everyone eventually lies down. Status softens in darkness. Ambition pauses. The body insists on limits. And across the enormous stretch of human time, night keeps asking the same simple thing. Find somewhere safe enough. Become still. And trust the darkness for a while. The room around you grows quieter now, and the long human night begins to lose its edges. You do not need to carry every detail with you. Let the old beds, dim lamps, moonlit paths, worn floors, quiet households, and distant voices soften into one gentle landscape. People have rested beneath countless skies, in places warm and cold, noisy and silent, crowded and lonely. The shapes of their nights differ, but the need beneath them remains familiar. Your own breathing can become slower. Your shoulders can settle. Nothing more needs to be discovered tonight. The ancient world can fade peacefully into darkness, leaving only the comforting thought that sleep has carried human beings through seasons, journeys, worries, dreams, and ordinary days for longer than anyone can remember. The light becomes faint, the sounds grow distant, and the long history of night grows still. You can simply rest now, quietly, gently, and without hurry.